Hey guys, welcome to the fourth and final video in our VP Racing Fuels shootout. So today we're going to be doing a summary of all the different results that we've had. So let's get it started.
All right, so as Bob mentioned, we are going to be doing a recap of all the results, trying to break things down, explain to you kind of the best uses for these, the different applications these might be found in. But I want to kind of go over all the numbers one more time, just so you kind of have an idea about what has happened and kind of remember from the previous videos. So let's start with the Challenger. Just go straight down. Tell me how it did on all the different fuels.
Yeah, the trophy kind of passed back and forth.
Throughout
several videos
we've been battling pretty good lately.
So starting at the top, baseline, Challenger did 639 to the tires on 12 degrees, 93 octane, a great strong number, I think.
Not bad.
Octanium, it really gained quite a bit with just some Octanium put into the 93, 15 degrees of timing. It didn't need a whole lot more. Made 667.
That was really good.
That's impressive.
I like that stuff. That's easy, quick and easy. You make it 100 octane.
Have a good day.
That's awesome.
MS-109, gosh, that was a nice improvement. 16 degrees is what it liked. It made 702.
This one was the big one that surprised me.
That's impressive.
That was good.
I like the fuel, but I was also still really impressed with that.
Yeah.
C16, which is traditionally like the best non-ethanol based fuel that we test, we see 710, and that was only at 18 degrees, which it just didn't need any more, didn't make any more power.
Right.
But that's 120 plus octane.
I don't even think it knocked on that one. It just started not making any more power.
Like,
and that's where you stop. You found your spot.
Yeah, no more power.
So, yep.
Yeah, and then on to the ethanol-based fuels. So we all know the Challenger didn't really like the ethanol-based fuels. It did a best of 674 at 5,000 RPM, 14 degrees of spark advance. It's really all it could tolerate before we ran out of volume, and the injectors were already over 100% at that point. So that was the end of that for the ethanol-based fuels, and we got a big for the X98. Not the fuel, but the car. The fuel was just so potent, we didn't have enough volume to push that much ethanol through.
Right.
So
cool.
So talk to us about the Corvettes.
Well, the Corvette did equally pretty darn well, honestly. When it comes down to the 93 octane, we were also at the same timing. 12 degrees was our baseline. We made 649, a little bit more than the Challenger at that point. However, when we started going to Octanium, it didn't do as well. You know, we still made more horsepower, but it wasn't the gains that you got out of it. We went up to 659, so a whole 10 horsepower. But still, 10 horsepower for a bottle. Maybe some reassurance, knock prevention, depending on what you're using it for. That was a good, good gain there. When we get to the MS-109, we were at 673. So we peaked out about 17 degrees, 673. Didn't want any more. I was hoping for more on that one because, now looking at your results, you did so much better, but that's just how it ended up. C16, however, did prove to be the best non-ethanol based fuel that we had. As usual, made the most power for the Vet before we get to ethanol. Made 701 on 21 degrees or so.
Okay.
So that was really good, 701. Jumping up to ethanol-based stuff, Corvette was able to handle it because it had a better fuel system. It was kind of built for this. So we were able to get 22 degrees of timing in there with C85, and that ran a whopping 722.
That's great.
1/2 a degree more on X98 at 22.5, and we ended up at 730, and that was it.
That's great. I
mean,
up from 49 base to
649 to 730. So I mean, it's a huge difference there. But again, you've got to have the mods to be able to run that. So we had the fuel system and the setup to be able to get that done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyways, we want to talk a little bit more about the data behind these fuels so we can explain why you might want to use these fuels, what kind of things, what kind of applications, scenarios, the cost, which is a huge driving factor for this.
All right, so we're going to start at the top with our variables, right? So starting with 93 octane, we're going to talk about what is octane, right? So octane is not what people think. People usually think it's some relationship of energy or amount of energy. It's really not. Octane is actually a measurement of resistance to auto ignition.
Right.
And so, the fuel's ability to resist spontaneously combusting on its own.
Right.
So a higher number means it will resist it better, also means it will tend to burn a bit slower.
Right.
Which is what we're seeing when we do our tests, which is why we typically lose a little power if we don't tune for a higher octane fuel. So octane, how is it figured out? So here in America, we use the R plus M divided by 2 method. And very simply put, that's R, which is research octane, plus M, which is motor octane, RON plus MON, and divide by 2 to get an average. Now the difference is the research one, and you can Google this to get a little better explanation for it. It's a little different than the motor one. The motor one is physically a actual, like a single cylinder engine. They've been using this since like the 50s. It's not really a modern method, but it's still how they figure out what they think actual motor octane is.
Right.
Okay, so that's octane explained. So Brett, why don't you talk about oxygen or O2 in the fuels?
Right, so the pump gas that we get, here in the States, and generally any pump gas that you're gonna use, is not oxygenated. There's no extra oxygen within that molecule chain. So we're just burning the raw hydrocarbons that are in there. Some of these fuels that we're dealing with VP Racing actually have an extra O2 molecule, which is great for combustion and making power. So we're gonna talk about, when we describe these fuels, which ones have oxygen added to them and how much they have.
Free power right there.
And we'll see what kind of gains those really had. So that's really important as well.
Yep.
And then of course the next thing that we really want to just kind of know, it's good to know, is our stoichiometry, or our stoich point, right?
Ideal combustion.
Ideal combustion. So all of these fuels will have different stoichiometry points, or stoich ratios.
It's funny to say that.
Stoichiometry.
Yes.
Stoichiometry.
Stoichiometry.
So the stoich point for each fuel is a little different, and it's just important to know that, because that's one of the things that we do change in our calibration to tell the PCM, hey, this is the ideal combustion point for this fuel. And that way the PCM knows what to do with it. And then the last thing that we like to compare
is price.
This is probably the thing everyone wants to know, price per horsepower, pay to play kind of thing. So price is one of those things we're going to break down for you on each one of these fuels. So you ready to get started on them?
93.
93.
We're going to start it.
So 93 is...
It's our baseline.
It's 93 octane.
It's 93 octane.
So there is no oxygen added to it.
Most of the time you don't see that now.
0%. And its stoich point is 14.08. Now, back in the day when we had no extra little bit of ethanol added to it, it was pure gasoline. It was actually 14.7. But these days, so if you're out there, hey, no, gasoline is 14.7, you're totally right. But pump gas these days has up to 10, maybe 15%. So stoich is generally floating around 14.08, and that's what we're going to go with on that. And right now, it is costing us somewhere around $3.50 or so. So that's just the average. I know it might be cheaper or more expensive where you live, but that's just what we're going with for this test. That's about what we were paying. So Octanium.
It's a unique option. It really is.
Octanium was great, actually. For bang for the buck, this stuff really, did help us out, and so it's kind of a very good alternative to going. So how much gallons do we need to make 100 octane?
10 gallons and 1 bottle of Octanium.
1 bottle of Octanium for 10. Okay. So we get 100 octane out of that.
You get 100 octane out of it, and then we think about it, it's a very inexpensive way to get right at 100 octane. So whether your car responds a whole lot to it or not with advancing spark, like the Corvette didn't respond a huge amount. It got about 10 horsepower.
10
Challenger
15,
responded a ton because it needed the octane. Right. But still, it's a very inexpensive way. It bumps up the price per gallon from a base of $3.50 to $5.70 per gallon.
Which is
add the cost
nothing for 100 octane.
No,
that's
very
cheap.
inexpensive. And the upsides of that are it transports easily. You could put a couple of these little bottles into your toolbox and go to the drag strip or the road course. Add it to your 93. Have a great day.
A little extra knock suppression. Maybe a little extra horsepower as well if you tune for it. And the stoich point doesn't change. There's no oxygen added to it. It's just an octane booster. So it's a fuel additive, and it's super easy to use and transport. So definitely like that stuff. I mean, that was really impressive to see, especially the Challenger, what it picked up on that. I mean, it behaved like 100 octane, and it did what it said.
Everybody always asks, well, can I just add an octane booster? Well, yes, you can, right? Well, you could also run a race fuel, but what is your combo? Is it a $50,000 engine? Maybe you don't want to just run Octanium. Maybe you need some race fuel because you really want to put your faith into some race fuel with that $50,000 engine. But if you have a stock engine, want some protection, or even a mildly built engine wants protection, and some added octane, there's really nothing wrong with Octanium.
Just a little extra edge. That's a good way to go.
I like it a lot. I have no problems with that stuff. It's good stuff.
But speaking of race fuel.
MS-109. MS-109. Now one of my new favorites, right?
It's
always been up there.
Got my attention this time. Yeah, it definitely did. So what's the octane rating on this?
So it's 105.5.
So it's actually not that high.
No, I mean, it's more than 100.
Relatively, though. I mean, it's good, but I mean, there's some that are pretty high up there.
There are.
You're thinking Octanium's 100. This is 105.5. And this stuff is quadruple the price almost,
it is.
Right?
However,
so why?
Your gains can be there.
Why are your gains so good?
Because some cars really need the octane in order to make the extra power, because you can add the spark you couldn't otherwise add. So you have to tune for it. You won't just magically get more power.
Right. And this stuff is oxygenated.
Oxygenated.
It's 9.32% oxygenated, which brings that extra O2 to the party.
Yep.
And the engine is going to love that. So that's why we don't see, 115, 120 octane out of this stuff. We're seeing 105.5, but that little bit of extra oxygen, we saw enormous gains on the Challenger.
For sure.
Pretty decent gains on the Corvette.
Pretty good.
Either way, gains.
Gains regardless.
And so this is, this could be good for your quarter-mile guy. It's kind of expensive. You're running at about $18.60 a gallon. So, if you've got that $30,000 motor,
you're gonna run it.
I'm gonna feed it this stuff.
You're gonna run it.
Obviously you can afford to do that if you've got that $30,000 motor.
Absolutely.
But, for your daily drivers, once, go to the drag strip, drive home, probably not usually the best thing for you.
Just running it at the drag strip's acceptable.
Yeah.
If you have
get
a good
there,
way of draining
fill it
out
up.
the pump.
And then that's it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's great stuff. As far as an unleaded, ready to go, bring one pail with you, run it at the track kind of thing.
And even for the Challenger, I'd run that instead of the C16.
Right.
Which did make more power, by the way, guys, but the downside is it's leaded. And we only got, I think, 8 more horsepower between MS-109 and C16. So in the Challenger's case, it doesn't need all the extra octane that the C16 provides, because it's 120 plus octane all by itself.
And it's an interesting result, it just, and that's where the levels come to. Now let's talk about C16. C16's like the grandfather of race gases, right? It's been around forever.
It's grandpappy, Colin.
And it's kind of, it's funny because it's leaded. And when I think of old time cars and gas from back in the day, it was leaded gasoline, right? And so I'm sure this came from that brew of things, and they're like, leaded and just all the octane. So this stuff has 120 plus octane. I mean, 120 plus. They don't even rate it past that. They're just like, this stuff's great. I don't even know if there's anything higher than that. Rocket fuel, I don't know. So this is 120 octane plus, but it has no O2 in it.
Right.
So it gets all of its power from that earlier ignition, that 120 octane, that ability to basically light it off sooner and get that burn started. But it's a slow burner.
It's a slow burner.
The Corvette dropped power immensely at the same baseline of 12 degrees. We had to add timing to it. So you guys don't just dump this in your tank and go, hey, I'm going to go fast, right? Its stoic point is like old gasoline, 14.7. Now it costs $20.80 a gallon roughly, and so it's the most expensive one we tested, right? And it's going to chew up your O2 sensors. It's not great for your cats, right? There, there's some things that make this not a great choice for people.
For a lot of people.
So you're going for max effort gasoline, not ethanol, but non-ethanol gasoline type of situation.
Drag strip only.
This is a drag strip type
drag
stuff.
Strip only.
Dyno Queen, drag strip. Got to make the number. Horsepower war.
Super high boost related people would love this because of the octane rating.
Absolutely.
20, 30 pounds of boost would love that.
All those guys with crazy setups.
Nitrous, that sort of
but
thing.
Again, it's expensive. And we didn't see a big spread on this. I mean, it made more power than MS-109. But for the dollar, for me, I'm going with the MS-109.
Well, Challenger for sure, because it didn't pick up that much. The Corvette loved it though.
The Corvette did love it, but it was still not enough for me to say, I'm gonna spend the extra money on the the price, and my O2 sensors. I would just go with the unleaded, MS-109. I think that would get me there.
So the point is, there's applications for people all over the board. That this is the right fuel or that's the right fuel based on what you're doing and what your car is going to be okay with, really.
Absolutely.
Well, you know where that's taking us to.
Ethanol?
Ethanol. The most controversial stuff ever. Right.
So C85, it's not that high of an octane.
No, actually, it's really not. I think it's only in the mid-90s. Like
it's 96.3. So it's not the octane that gets us there.
No.
It's really making the power because of all the O2.
It's oxygenated at 31, almost 32%.
Yeah, 31.97%. That's a ton of oxygen. So those extra O2 molecules, they're in the combustion process. They're bringing extra oxygen into that situation. And I mean, if you think about like other power adders that are liquid, like nitrous oxide, NOS or whatever, that's why nitrous oxide works. It brings in O2. It breaks apart. Boom, you get the extra O2. Make a ton of power. So this oxygenation, it's not nearly as dense as nitrous.
No.
But that's what's making your power. It's not the octane in this case.
It's interesting to note that the guys at VP Race Fuels we talked to about this also think there are some relationships to the fact that you have to run it so rich. Your stoic point, which we'll get to, is like 9.2 to 1 with E85. You're running so much of that fuel, you get a I can never get it right. Anyway, you get an effect of added compression because you have that much extra fuel going in the combustion chamber.
The ethanol-based fuels, at least for the Corvette, because unfortunately the Challenger couldn't really run them all the way. But for the Corvette, made the most power.
For sure.
Now, To do so, we have an enormous fuel system,
Cost
right?
money.
So that fuel system comes up front. We had to have return system. We had bigger lines, dual pumps,
Yep.
you know, the whole 9 yards.
Yep.
And if you've already got all that, then ethanol is something that you can handle. You
Yep.
can run that and you can make that happen.
Yep.
When it comes to a vehicle like the Challenger, where it
Right.
was basically a really bolt-on type of vehicle,
Yep.
doesn't mean he couldn't drop another pump in there,
Right.
do it, you know,
But
twin
it's just more
setup,
money,
bigger
more
injectors.
stuff, and is it worth it at that point?
Is it
to
worth
spend
it, you know?
$2,000 on a fuel system versus some other mod that will net you more?
Exactly.
Look,
You
I don't
know,
care how you do it.
again,
Power costs money.
high boost applications,
Fine.
people looking for every inch of power.
Yep, I understand.
Mostly quarter mile because your
Yep.
gas mileage suffers with this. So
Yep.
go to a road course, you're using 35% more fuel.
Not
You've got to
gonna run.
bring 4 more pails or 4 more 5-gallon jugs with you just to
Yep.
make it through the weekend.
Yep.
So now you've got extra added weight
Cost.
and you know, dealing
Yeah.
with that and fewer laps before you've got to come in and refill.
Sure.
Speaking of cost though,
Yes.
it's not that expensive.
No.
$12.60 is what we got the C85 per
Yep.
gallon.
Yep.
So that's not bad, you know, compared to $20.80 for C16 or $18.60
You're also
for
losing 30% fuel economy, so
exactly.
you gotta add that back into the cost.
So really, we're averaging what, $15
Probably
a gallon?
I'm gonna have
you
to run
know?
the math, but I'm gonna guess that. That's
Yeah.
probably right.
So
Yeah.
it's not always just up front. You know,
Yep.
you bought the fuel system. Now you've got more fuel
Yep.
you're using.
Yep.
But you make a little more power.
Yep.
So that's a good thing.
Pick your poison.
Speaking of power, the
Yep.
winner was X98.
Yeah, for sure.
The Corvette.
I did not expect that, man.
I didn't think it would do
expect that.
much over
No.
the C85.
No.
X98 just didn't seem like it was going to,
No.
you know, be that big of a difference because honestly, it's got a little bit more octane, but it's only a little bit more oxygen too.
Yeah.
So the octane goes up to 111.5 plus. That's what their
Sure.
spec sheet says, and the oxygen goes from 31.97 to 34.7. So got about
more
3-4% more oxygen, but it ended up making more power.
Yep.
Just a little bit, but
Yep.
it did.
Yep.
And it actually comes in for some reason a little cheaper. If you
Wow.
go and buy a 5-gallon bucket and you
Yeah.
divide it out, it comes out to $9.60.
So it is cheaper. You get
So,
a higher concentration of the alcohol.
you do.
Okay.
So like
All right.
this would be a great option for guys who like to run blends,
Yeah.
like 93 and they do an
Yeah.
E50 blend.
Yeah.
You buy this, you
Yeah.
mix this with your 93, you make
Boy.
a really pure E50 blend
Good quality
with good
stuff.
quality stuff,
Yeah.
and you'd probably be in like the $7 range with a
Yeah.
decent octane.
Sure.
You know, and
Sure.
you'd have your ethanol blend, but it wouldn't be E85, it'd be like
Right.
an E50
E50,
blend.
yeah.
So that's where I'd probably see this coming in for me, you know, personally. Now,
Absolutely.
we've been talking about all these fuels, you know, price per gallon, you know,
Yeah.
what are some reasons that you would use, say, you know, let's just go back to the gasoline-based fuels, okay?
Sure.
Drop the ethanol
Sure.
stuff for now.
Sure.
You know, C16, MS109, Octanium 93.
Yeah.
We've talked about all those. You know, if I was going to the drag strip,
Yep.
it sounds like all of those are a winner.
They're all applicable.
Right.
Because you could, if worst case, you've got a really expensive one that you love.
Right.
You drain out your 93 when you get there, and you put in the good stuff.
Right.
Whatever you don't run, you drain it back out.
Switch it out,
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
Okay.
we see a lot of time at the drag strip. So
Road course.
it gets a little more tricky,
Right.
Because now you're talking about, you know, fuel consumption and costs go up significantly. We're seeing around 2.5 miles per gallon on a road course.
Right.
You know, with the Corvette or Mustang, whatever we run, we're 2 to 3 miles per gallon, which is not great.
No.
And we run for, 20, 30 minutes on track at a time. A lot HPDE stuff is super popular these days. Track
Yeah.
days are super popular.
Yeah.
So am I going to go run a C16? Probably not, because I'm worried about the sensors. If I'm going to
Sensors
run
and, yeah.
anything, like that, it's going to be an MS109 or a 90. If I don't have a super radical car, so no real boost, right? On a road course, I'm going to run 93 plus an Octanium.
Yeah.
And that gives you that safety margin that you're after.
Right.
And that's just a great solution. And sometimes we also do the mix like you talked about. Bring, some pails of MS109 and splice it in with some.
Yeah, mix
93
it in,
and-
give you a little
Yeah.
splash.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
You do want to tune for any of these fuels anyway, so
Yeah.
you don't just throw them in there and expect them to just make
No.
magic power. It's
No.
not like, hey, I filled up with MS109, I'm now faster. We actually
Right.
saw the Corvette
Yeah.
lose power, and
Yeah.
that's the typical
That's
result
normally how it goes.
if you don't change your tune. So it's really important to do that.
Yeah.
When it comes to the ethanol-based ones, again,
Yeah.
I think the same is true, right?
True.
You have to have the system to run it.
Yep.
If you do, can I pick a winner? Well, yeah, X98 is cheaper.
Yep.
And it made more power.
Yep.
So if I had to pick one of
I
those
would
to
do
have
that,
in my
for sure.
garage,
Yeah.
I'd have the X98.
Yep.
Other than that, all of them were really impressive.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it's
Yeah.
it's amazing what they can do. We're up 75, 80 horsepower.
It's amazing.
With just fuel changes,
Fuel
from
and some
pump
tuning,
gas.
and that's about it.
So
Yeah.
it's a pretty amazing thing to see. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
If you want to know more about those VP Racing fuels, you can go over to vpracingfuels.com or Google it. You'll find their website. And
Yeah, so guys, this concludes our VP Racing Fuels Shootout series. Thank you so much for watching with us. Please make sure you like us on Facebook, follow us on social media, and as always, stay tuned.